Welcome everyone to Automated Application Integration with FME and Cityworks. We're very pleased to present that we're joined with Cityworks as our co-host here today, and I'll pass things over to David to get started with introducing himself.
Thanks, Elizabeth. My name's David Horton. I manage the professional services team here at Cityworks, and we'll be presenting today with SAFE with FME, just kind of talking about a partnership, and Rachel and Brian from my team, who will introduce themselves here in a sec, will kind of show some use case scenarios today.
Okay, well, I'll pick it up from David. My name's Bryan Chadwick. I am the system architect for David's team, professional services at Cityworks. We were very excited to kind of show the possibilities of integration between FME and Cityworks, and kind of show you how some scenarios with automation and what you can do with all of that.
And I'm Rachel Manko. I am a project manager also on David and Brian's team, and we're excited to talk to you guys today.
My name is Simon Mendoza. I'm a technical support specialist on the FME server team. So automating workflows and integrating workflows are kind of my bread and butter. And I've done a lot of Cityworks integrations while I've been with SAFE. And yeah, excited to show some of those off today. Pass it to Chris.
All right, and I'm Chris. I'm part of our customer solutions team here at SAFE Software. So I really exist to help organizations like yours maximize the value of your FME deployments. So hopefully can show off a meaningful demo for you today, and I'll pass it back to, I think it goes back to Elizabeth for the LiveStorm overview.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Chris. So thanks, everyone. At this point, we'll all turn off our webcams just to save on some bandwidth for upcoming demos. And with that, if you are new to LiveStorm and you do have any audio issues throughout, please feel free to click that help button on the bottom left. There's 4 simple steps there to take. Then we have the react button. Share your reactions with us throughout the webinar. We love to see those. And the questions and chat tabs. So use the chat to keep letting us know where you're tuning in from there, and leave any comments throughout the webinar. And then we have the questions tab as well. So any questions that you might have for the Cityworks team or our SAFE team, please leave them there, and we'll keep an eye on that throughout. And then we'll also be hosting Q&A at the end. So a live Q&A session to come. Then we have the polls tab to the left of that, and we will be bringing up a poll in a moment here, so keep an eye on that. If you do wish to download the deck and follow along live, you can do so by clicking that download button on the top right. And that brings us to our agenda. I'll pass things over to, I believe, Sinai.
Yep. Thanks, Elizabeth. So today we have a lot of exciting stuff in store for you. The Cityworks team is going to kick us off by discussing some of the common challenges with Cityworks deployments and how FME can address those. And then we're going to go into best tips and tricks for asset management, some real life scenarios and use cases. Then Chris and I are going to take the wheel to discuss the FME tool set for working with Cityworks in FME. And we have a couple of great demos planned to show those off. In the end, like Elizabeth said, we'll have a live Q&A with the whole panel and share some resources with everyone. But before that, we really want to hear from you. Please share with us, what is your experience working with both or either platforms? So are you an FME user? Are you a Cityworks user? Do you use both already? Please let us know in the poll tab there. Cast your vote. I'm really curious to see what this is going to look like. So far looking good. I just realized there's no option for someone who uses neither. So if you're someone who's not using either platform, please let us know in the chat why you might be interested in this webinar, what systems you are using, because I'd be curious. So I'll just take a moment for these results to come in.
Yeah, it looks like most people have voted already. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Looks like we have a lot of Cityworks users, not yet FME users, so that's exciting. Some FME, not yet Cityworks, that's awesome. Well, thanks everyone for voting, and regardless of your experience, I'm really glad you've all decided to join us today. I think this is going to be a good one. We can get started into the content right away. I'm going to invite David Horton from the Cityworks team to kick us off with some of the challenges.
Okay, so my first slide, what is Cityworks and how does FME fit into that? As we've seen in the poll, many of you are aware of Cityworks or Cityworks users, but those who are not, Cityworks is the premier GIS-centric public asset management platform in the market today. We've been in business since 1996. We're a Trimble company. And that phrase GIS-centric, the core tenet of that is your Esri GIS is the authoritative asset repository. And what that means is we leverage that asset repository in GIS. We don't duplicate it. There's no syncing. There's no duplication of data. And that's really an important differentiator for us. In the last 25 years or so, in the marketplace, there have been significant changes in technology, starting from a desktop application working as an extension in ArcView or ArcGIS desktop, and we've now progressed into being a server-side application. The great benefit of that is now there are RESTful API services, a rich suite of those services that are available for you to utilize. So basically anything you can do in our platform, you can leverage and perform with those APIs and automate those. And that's really where FME comes into play. So FME, as I see it, in my opinion, is the premier automation platform to integrate and use those APIs in third-party business system integrations, data migrations, etc. On this slide, we're just kind of giving you kind of 3 foundational asset management tips or foundational things that we've seen are very important. Number one, every one of your asset layers that you're going to leverage in Cityworks needs to have an entity UID. That ID needs to be unique amongst that layer, but even safer if it's unique across the entire geo database. That's better practice, especially when thinking forward to a potential migration to the utility network. Second, all activities, whether work management or whether permitting, should be tied to an asset or at a minimum tied to a location or an address through a geolocate. That way, each one of these activities inherently have geography. And kind of third, all costs related to these activities should be tracked in Cityworks. That will help us, potentially help us in the future, derive that true life cycle cost of that asset. So let's get back to the point of the presentation. How are we leveraging FME with Cityworks? So Cityworks, as mentioned before, is an enterprise system that can and should be integrated with other enterprise systems. We know this can be messy. There's a lot of sources of data that need to be moved and different criteria to move it. And that's where really FME steps in and helps us in that endeavor. This slide is really a graphical representation of what that kind of looks like. So on the left side, you're seeing different data sources. On the right side, you're seeing the different consumers of that data, and FME sitting there in the middle, kind of as the automation platform, is how we're moving data from platform to platform so that a user in finance who needs to see Cityworks data doesn't need to log into Cityworks. They see that data in finance. Or vice versa, a user in public works who is used to using Cityworks doesn't need to log into finance to see relevant data. They see that data presented to them in Cityworks. So I'm going to pass it over to Rachel next to go through a couple of use cases. Rachel, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, David. Yeah, so like you mentioned, I'm going to be talking about some of the use cases we have. The first one is data migrations, where we bring over activities from legacy systems or other archiving databases. Ideally, these systems have output to a REST endpoint or other APIs that can be utilized, but there will be cases where direct access to the RDBMs or something like XLR access feature readers are needed. And make sure to take advantage of the Cityworks APIs through the custom HTTP callers for built-in data integrity checks and handling downstream actions. Next, we have automations, which replace existing database-driven solutions with API-centric ones that are not reliant on direct access and are supported from existing version release lines moving forward. And this is becoming increasingly important as hosted environments like Cityworks and ArcGIS Online are offered to free up IT and development resources. Our next one is solutions. And usually middleware pieces are needed for these. And what's better than dealing with Cityworks and Esri than the valued GIS expertise that FME offers? Esri solutions leverage feature layers under the hood where the data from user interactions is written and there are webhooks available to wire up and automate passing of data between platforms. And finally, we have our business licensing and case history. So usually there is a lot of data when it comes to legacy permitting land and licensing data. In Cityworks, we call that PLL. And this presents the need that it needs to be imported into Cityworks during an implementation phase. And the greater complexity of the database schema as compared to AMS makes the use of chained API calls ideal for migrating data and automating processes during a case life cycle. This exceeds what advanced configuration and Cityworks webhooks may provide. FME greatly expedites building automations via an extensive library of out-of-the-box and custom transformers to assist in data formatting. And we have seen clients and partners do back-end migrations and cause unintended performance issues that compromise the referential integrity of the Cityworks database schema. So this helps with that. And now I'm going to pass it over to Brian.
All right, thank you, Rachel. And I'll be presenting on kind of a customer story that we had. This comes from the good folks at Strukton Rail in Sweden, and also the Esri Sweden team working with them. And I had a privilege of sitting with those folks at our Cityworks Innovate conference back in December and being present for a presentation they did talking about their integration with FME and Cityworks. So, you know, at Strukton, they have 950 employees. They deal with projects and maintenance. It looks like their share of the network is at 35%, and they have 9,300 miles of track. One thing that makes them interesting is that they don't own this infrastructure, to my knowledge, but they are responsible for taking care of it. So, you know, obviously we see circumstances like that. And, you know, that makes things, I think, all the more important. The goals here were to kind of have all information digitized, to offer one-time registration, and of course, to make things as automated as possible. And that's really where FME excels. Some of the key business challenges, and I think these are not unique, these are things we all kind of face. And some of them are, though, a bit unique, like not owning the infrastructure or asset data, timely real-time access to quality data, extensive client documentation needs, and several clients, obviously, with their own applications that you got to tie into. Again, that cross-team data sharing, the all too familiar manual and inefficient processes, and obviously meeting client demands and the spatial locational data being paramount, you know, because of course GIS is kind of at the heart of all of this. So kind of to look at their maintenance process versus data handling. So through, you know, ArcGIS, they had, you know, Action Manager and automations that were transferring work order data and documents to these client applications. And then through Cityworks, you had the import of the work orders and the assets. You have a series of FME automations, both also document and XML generating, where you have the creating of work orders heading over to the ERP, the transferring of invoice data to the ERP, obviously, and then transferring time transactions to timesheets. Of course, from timesheets, you're going to always go over to payroll, and you've got to have that connectivity between your ERP, your timesheet, and then your payroll folks, and then outputting that to Power BI. You know, for the rich level of dashboards that they offer, to be able to kind of look and analyze that data so that it can quickly be consumed by the folks that are decision makers. So essentially, you're moving from order to planning, planning to execution, execution to documenting, to invoicing, and then to follow up. So, a very good and solid linear process. Some of the key solutions, aspects of the solution that were integral to the client, integrations, message handling, obviously, FME excels in that area, the publisher subscriber architecture, and data modeling. And then the automations to assist that. We have, Cityworks Action Manager with webhooks, you have Esri webhooks, and obviously, the rich tools that FME has through their automations. And then this kind of takes a look real quickly at an example of the integration at a timesheet level. So you've got finance, you've got ArcGIS and Cityworks communicating with one another. You've got the Cityworks data being pushed out through a webhook in JSON format, and then that coming to a Cityworks timesheet publisher automation in FME, hosted on FME server, and then communication between that and a timesheet subscriber that's also present in FME server. And then having that data right over to the folks dealing with the timesheet database. And then also, of course, having ties in logically to, other enterprise database solutions and the overall data warehouse, along with SAP, of course. So this kind of highlights an integration timesheet. And then we'll look at an integration here to finance as well. So obviously, again, you have that same, Cityworks and ArcGIS bidirectional communication. You've got Cityworks pushing webhooks, again, JSON format, easiest kind of acceptable format within the industry, but we can push it in other ways as well. We're then looking at an automation Cityworks export FME server app, and that's communicating back and forth with a CDM work order export topic in FME server. And then we've got a subscription and it's running through to finance, and finance, of course, is dealing with invoicing. But as well, we've got it running through to another subscriber, which is the data warehouse, so that we're making sure to, keep a comprehensive history of what's going on through kind of the enterprise itself. So definitely, a complex but worthwhile integration point here. And then let's look at some takeaways and vision from what was achieved by the organization. So obviously, architecture is the key. You got to make sure that you have a solid system architecture that you're drawing upon. FME automations for extended functionality. Again, webhooks and API calls are great, but if you need to utilize more than one and be able to loop those calls, that's where FME can really help you with that through their no-code front end. And then obviously, these are event-driven. The keys important to monitor your FME. Obviously, anybody who's running FME server knows the value of doing so and the importance of doing so. And then standardizing the way of working versus sub-processes. And then the vision looking forward, digitizing versus acceptance, one-time registration versus client restrictions. And I think, automating not just this, but moving forward. As well, as you can see kind of the bottom left of the slide here, again, all credit here to Structon. We have a little bit of information, so if anybody was interested, they could get in contact and speak with those good folks. And I think they'd be glad to go into much greater detail, as again, they gave a very comprehensive presentation at our user conference recently that was wonderful. So I'm going to hand it back over to Rachel here to kind of talk a little bit about some lessons learned from our team on our side. So go ahead, Rachel.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, so there's nothing wrong with it. So feel free to use APIs to avoid direct database access requirements. Use transformers and take time on the front end to do proper data preparation. This deals with avoidable characters and formatting standards. And take advantage of the detailed library, trainings, tools, templates, the FME community postings. These are freely available to jumpstart your knowledge, and we'll have links on the next slide for some of those trainings. And something personally that I found useful was just to take notes of what you were doing, what you were changing, because when you have to come back to it, if something's not working, it's easier to know what you had done instead of wondering like why you did that. So I'm going to pass it back to Brian to continue on for our lessons learned.
Okay. Yeah, and then these are kind of looking at, pushing things kind of next level beyond just FME workbench. So again, consider running everything you possibly can through FME Server, because you want to take advantage of the dynamic engines, the automation, the job routing, all of that different functionality that's available through FME Server. Of course, this is just kind of touches home with us, but research FME Cloud as a viable alternative. We are utilizing FME Cloud, for example. We do have FME servers as well, but we utilize FME Cloud in our professional services group, and it's really nice because it's always available when you want it to be, and it's really agile to update to the latest builds, which for us is really important because we're dealing with all the latest technology and making sure that we kind of keep everything in sync. And then definitely explore building out no-code applications. So we're talking about with those no-code applications, even looking to expand to gallery applications, which are basically a series of these applications strung together. And now FME's even introduced automation applications, which can kind of take things even a step further. And so just to note, the image here is an example of a proof of concept tool that we built for automating a lot of our general information that we get from clients when we're first building out or adding to an implementation. And as Rachel touched on, we have a couple of links here. One of them is for an excellent tutorial on getting started with Cityworks and FME. And then another is talking about, it's a training actually, where we're looking at connecting data with Cityworks. So those are definitely, again, part of those excellent resources that are available. So I'll now hand it off here to Christian from FME and allow him and Sinai to proceed.
Awesome. Thanks, Cityworks team. So yeah, for part 2 of this webinar, what we're going to be talking about is more the safe software and FME side of things. So we'll talk about connecting to Cityworks with FME. For those of you who are new to safe software and FME, we'll just do a little overview of the company as well as the products that we have available. So we are Safe Software. We've been in business for approaching 30 years at this point. We're trusted by 16,000 organizations worldwide, and we also have a global partner network on top of our technology partners like the Cityworks and Trimble teams. We are the sole vendors of the FME integration platform. So we produce a couple of applications, one being FME Desktop, 2 being FME Server, as well as FME Cloud and the FME mobile applications. FME Desktop is really the core of the platform. So this is where you build or you author your workflows. These will consist of things like readers or your inputs, transformers. Those are essentially the tools that do the work. They can transform your data, do validation, prepare things for service requests and things like that, as well as writers, and those would essentially be your outputs. And then we have FME Server, which takes those workspaces built in FME Desktop. You can publish them to FME Server, as Brian was mentioning a little bit earlier, and you can run them in automations in FME Server apps, or even in real-time stream using stream processing. FME Cloud is just a hosted version of FME Server. It's available on AWS, so it's essentially hosted by by Safe Software rather, and it's all the same functionality, just in a Linux deployment. And lastly, with the mobile applications, those are 2 different methods. So the first one would be FME AR. So if you need to visualize any AR data sets, you can do that with FME Mobile. Of course, you can create those data sets in FME Desktop and deliver them with FME Server as well. And the last app for FME Mobile is the Data Express, and that's essentially a native application on a mobile device that allows you to connect to your FME Server and interact with it that way. So it's a great way to get up and running if you're working off of mobile. For FME and Cityworks, how this all came together is because we have so many different systems we can support, we allow customers to really connect anything like an ERP, a payroll system, anything like that to Cityworks, just from the variety of data sources and APIs that we can work with. So that kind of brings the whole FME and Cityworks story together. And the way it all works is actually requiring no code, because we have all those transformers to help your data move from system to system. Go to the next slide there. So FME's kind of backbone story is connect, transform, and automate. It's kind of a recurring theme that we have here. So the first one would be connect, and that refers to all of the different systems we can support. So anything from geospatial data, anything with an API, big data, databases, real-time IoT sensors, you name it, there's a good chance we support it. Or if it has an API, we definitely can support it. Actually getting the data from system A to system B requires the use of transformation. So this would be where our transformers come in. And we have over 500 of them to help you do things like combine, restructure, validate, and really transform your data to make sure it maps perfectly from system A into system B. So for example, going into Cityworks or going out of Cityworks to harmonize your systems. All of these, up until this point, we've been talking mainly about the desktop application where you're building the workspaces, building those data flows, and all of these things can be automated using that FME server or FME cloud platform. This can allow you to do things like run jobs in batch, do things that are event-based. So as soon as you submit a survey, it could kick off a series of jobs, as you saw in those screenshots that Brian was showing earlier, or even do, again, stream processing if you're working with IoT sensors. Brian also mentioned the ability of FME Server to use self-serve applications. So those are called FME Server workspace apps. And that makes the power of a workspace really easy to share, whether it's internal to restricted users that are local on your FME server, or if you need it to be publicly available for the general public. Those are both viable options. So FME Server is really a very flexible, secure platform. You can kind of choose where you want to deploy it, whether it's Windows, Linux, in the cloud, in your own private cloud. You have a lot of options there. So that's a quick overview of FME, Safe Software and FME, and I'll pass it off to Sanai for a quick flash demo.
Thanks, Chris. I'm going to speak to some of the FME tools we have for working with Cityworks in a moment. But first, let's jump into a quick flash demo that'll show you what this looks like in action. So just start that now. So this is an Excel sheet containing costs associated with different work orders, and I'm going to show you how fast it is to load this data into Cityworks with FME. So we begin in FME Workbench, where I've already read in that Excel data, which you can see here. Our first transformer is going to be the Cityworks equipment costs. And I'll connect it to our Excel data, and then all we have to do is load in the required parameters. So in this case, it's going to be our web connection, where is our Cityworks instance, work order ID, that kind of thing. Next, I'm going to do a labor cost custom transformer. And similarly, we're just going to fill out what's required. This time, it's going to be geared towards employees. It's all found in our spreadsheet. We can run this workflow, and what FME is doing is taking that Excel data and sending it to Cityworks using these custom transformers. Cityworks returns a whole whack of information about those work orders and the different updates we've made, which we could use downstream if we wanted to. But this time we're just going to take one of these work order IDs and look it up in Respond to confirm that our costs were added. So here's one of our work orders from the spreadsheet, and if I scroll down, we can see that we have some labor and equipment costs that have been updated. So with that, you get an idea of how quickly spreadsheet data can be translated into usable information in your Cityworks instance with FME. Awesome. So we started with that demo because we know that Cityworks data may begin or end in other formats and applications. And the first step to building these kinds of workflows is to create a Cityworks web connection. And a web connection is what's going to allow you to securely work with your Cityworks data in FME. And all it takes is your username and password. And then once that's in, you can safely reuse, share, and maintain this connection across all of your workflows on all of our platforms. And once you're connected, it's simple to start plugging your data into these custom transformers that we've made to accomplish simple tasks in Cityworks. In that flash demo, we saw the equipment and labor transformers, but you might also be interested in things like the work order creator, updater, those made for service requests, inspections, contractors, and lots of others. These transformers are all about just making it very convenient to get your Cityworks processes started from FME Workbench. Of course, it would be impossible to build a custom transformer for every foreseeable workflow. We know that every organization has different priorities and unique requirements, and there's so much you can do in Cityworks. So if you don't see the pre-built tool that does what you want, I promise it's really simple to start building your own. And if you're familiar with using Cityworks from a browser, it doesn't take long to pick up the REST API. The HTTP caller transformer makes it even easier to work with APIs from FME. Once you make one request, the rest follow the same pattern, and you can actually look inside of one of our custom transformers to see what that pattern looks like. And when you get the hang of it, you'll be thinking of all the ways that you can automate your workday. And I'm only kind of speaking from personal experience there. And when we want to do even more, automating workflows and making them self-serve is the natural progression. So FME Server and Cityworks are particularly powerful integration duo. And part of that is due to webhooks. Webhooks enable this real-time messaging between platforms so that we can respond and react to events as they happen. So the moment something occurs in Cityworks, an automation can process, transform, and deliver that data anywhere you'd like. And there's many other ways that we can trigger workflows. So file updates, schedules, new emails, and database edits are all examples of other ways that we could automate data workflows into Cityworks or out of Cityworks. And not every user needs to be a workflow whiz. FME server apps can empower non-FME and non-Cityworks users to submit and request data without ever logging into either application. So now that we know something about all of the tools for working with Cityworks data, I'm going to pass it over to Chris to show what this looks like in action.
Yeah, thanks so much, Denai. And yeah, so we're going to see just a simple demo of going from Survey 123 into Cityworks, and this is going to be powered by webhooks. So our goal here is really going to be to automate the creation of service requests, including the reporter information, any attachments, and anything else incoming from the Survey 123 submissions. The solution here is really going to be FME Server is going to be running behind the scenes with an automation that utilizes that webhook trigger that Sinai was just mentioning. And that's going to start the process. That's going to run a workspace or multiple workspaces, send emails, and keep everything harmonized across the two systems. So the result here is that we're going to get a near real-time data integration across Cityworks and ArcGIS Online. I say that because it takes just a few seconds to get the actual webhook content from system A into system B. But yeah, we're going to get everything from Cityworks and ArcGIS Online synchronized, including all of those attachments. So what this is going to look like in practice, but once we actually get into it, is we're going to pull up a Survey 123 code violation form, and we're going to submit a new code violation for something like tallgrass. And as soon as we submit that request, it's going to kick off that automation webhook trigger, and it's going to start a process. So it's going to run a couple of jobs and start to make sure that the data sets between the two systems are in sync. All that, again, is sitting on top of a workspace that has been published to FME Server, and that workspace was built to specifically integrate ArcGIS Online and Cityworks, and it utilizes that service request creator, similar to that custom transformer that Sinai was just showing, and we'll dive into how you can edit that and see how you can build out additional API calls using that HTTP caller. So using all of those things, we're going to be able to synchronize ArcGIS Online with Cityworks. So we can actually pull this up now. Let's give it a second to load. So what we're going to be doing is just going through and filling out a very basic Survey 123 survey. This is just going to be filling out any fields that are required. So things like tall grass, dropping a pin on a map if that's something that you have, uploading any attachments, and any comments about the violation. We also have contact information, and this is going to be utilized in that automation to send the contact any links to the service request and ArcGIS Online feature service as well. So as soon as I hit that submit button, that's going to start off that FME server process, and we're going to see kind of the result of that once everything has been created here. So it's going to start off with that webhook trigger and run the workspaces and send an email once that service request and ArcGIS Online feature has been created. And we can see that we've actually included the links to those specific features. So I can open that up in Cityworks, and we can see that and respond again. We have submitted that response in Survey 123 with that attachment that we just mentioned. If we can scroll down to the bottom, we can see there's all the customer notes, all the same information that was submitted from that Survey 123 request. You can see the same results in ArcGIS Online rather, and this is going to have all the same information that was submitted there, in addition to that service request ID. So we're making sure that the IDs are synchronizing from each system, so it kind of closes that loop. Once again, this is all powered by a single automation, and it just starts off with that webhook trigger. So again, once that Survey 123 survey is submitted, it's going to send the contents of that survey as a JSON packet into this automation, which the workspace can then parse and use those transformers and service request creator to create that service request, update the ID on ArcGIS Online, and then kind of synchronize things to close that loop again. So this automation actually uses two workspaces. The first is to create that service request, and the second is to deal with any attachments. We can actually take a quick look at that first workspace here. So the bulk of the work in this workspace is being done by that service request creator. There's additional transformers, but we're just going to focus in on that one right now. So you can use this to quickly connect to your Cityworks instance and create service requests. You simply just have to fill out a couple of parameters, add any additional parameters that you would like to fill out. So any additional fields that aren't pre-populated there for you, you can add those in a JSON content there. And we can actually edit that custom transformer so we can see what it looks like on the inside. As Sinai was mentioning just a few minutes ago, it is really powered by that HTTP caller to do that REST API call. So we're going to do a post method here and hit the endpoint that is specified for the service request API call. And we can fill out any of the information just using that multi-part form data. So there's actually a subsequent call that we need to do here just to fill out that customer call and add them to the request. So we can, again, use that HTTP caller. It doesn't have to be inside that custom transformer. You can use it in the workspace as well. And we can fill out any additional information and fill out any additional parameters that we need to as required by our process. So it's a great way to utilize either a custom transformer that's built like the service request creator or an HTTP caller if you need to provide additional calls for the process. And I think we're back to Sinai at this point.
Okay, and I'm going to just carry on with this same storyline for the next part of the demo. Except this time we're going to be leveraging Cityworks built-in support for webhooks to demonstrate a bidirectional integration. And just as we did from Survey 123, we can also use automations to receive live event updates from Cityworks work order and push them into ArcGIS Online, as well as update other records within your Cityworks system with change requests. And in the end, we're going to have a very simple workflow really that integrates service requests and work orders across multiple applications. And while you watch, just imagine how your data might be enriched in between these workflows, because as we know, FME has an entire transformation toolbox in addition to these integration tools. So this is really just a template to get your imagination going. So we're going to start with a work order this time for mowing that's connected to that last service request. And the two records are linked in the back in Cityworks. And once the work is completed for this work order, we want the service request to be updated and the customer to be notified. And we'll do this by leveraging Cityworks Action Manager to fire a webhook message to FME server every time that status is updated on our work order. And when the webhook trigger receives the status update, the automation will run a workspace and complete the workflow by updating the service request in both Cityworks and ArcGIS Online and send out that notification to the original Survey 123 respondent. So let's jump into what that demo looks like. In just one moment. Get it ready. Okay, so let's pick up where we left off at our ArcGIS Online web map. Here we have a Survey 123 submission and its status is currently received. We can see the exact same service requests that our last automation created in Cityworks Respond. So for this time, we have an associated work order for mowing. And when this mowing is complete, we want its status change to be reflected in our service requests in both ArcGIS Online and in Cityworks. And we can accomplish these types of near real-time integrations using webhooks. Action Manager is an admin tool in Cityworks that allows us to configure webhook events. It starts with an action event that listens for certain types of activity in Cityworks. So in this case, we want to listen for every status change for work orders, and we only want that to apply to our mowing and spraying templates. Action templates are connected to action events, and they determine what the messages say and where it's going to go. So this particular action template I've set up to send just a work order ID and a status to our FME server automation, but we don't yet have a destination for the webhook message. So we can go over to FME server. And this automation looks a lot like our last one, except for this webhook trigger is going to be receiving a message from Cityworks instead of Survey 123. So if I grab the URL from our webhook trigger and paste it into our template here, save, I can test that these two systems are connected with the test event from Cityworks. And our automation is listening. So if I go into the log file, here we can see our test event has come in successfully. So that's fantastic. The values are empty for test events. So of course the workspace failed to process the empty values. But once this automation receives the message that with the status update, we want it to be processed in a workspace. So let's take a look at what workspace we're going to use for this process. We can run the workspace in FME Workbench with some sample data. So here we have a sample work order ID and status. And the first thing we do, of course, is flatten them into attributes so we can easily work with them in our workspaces. So status complete, work order ID. And next we want to grab all of the service requests associated with that work order in Cityworks using a custom request in the HTTP caller, which you're now familiar with. And that just returns request IDs from Cityworks. And next we want to update the service request in Cityworks now. So we're going to use an attribute value mapper to map all of the work order statuses to their equivalent service request status. This is a pretty simple operation here, but it represents the fact that data doesn't always arrive perfectly and ready to submit to Cityworks. Oftentimes we justify doing kind of manual data entry because of these specific requirements that seem difficult maybe to plan for. But there's tons of transformers that can do the work for you, such as cleaning and validating and building in decision making for your particular data sets. And this is just an example of that. Then we're going to take our service request ID and map status and pass it into the Cityworks Updater custom transformer. You might notice that this custom transformer is not actually available on the FME Hub for download, and that's because I took a published Cityworks work order updater and I just tweaked it to accomplish what I actually wanted it to do for this workflow, which is update a service request instead. And this is why I highly recommend using the custom transformers as prototypes for your own requests. Since we've already built in most of that logic you'll need to complete for any Cityworks request, it's a really fast and sure way to get started. After we have our updated service requests in Cityworks, we can update our web map in ArcGIS Online using the ArcGIS Online writer. And of course, we want to keep all of our stakeholders informed, and we'll request the contact information associated with the service requests from Cityworks in the HTTP caller here. So again, that's just another request to Cityworks using the request ID. And returned back is going to be the contact information for the person who originally submitted the survey 123 code violation. That completes our workflow with an email to the survey submittee. So let's test it out. So there's really only one step for us to test out this workspace and workflow, and that is to change the status in Cityworks. So here we are back at our work order, and I'm going to change it from requested to complete. Let's say all the mowing was done, therefore our code violation is now completed and addressed. Once that work order is saved, we should be able to go back to our automation log file, and we should see another entry after our test event. And here it is. Here we have a work order ID, this time with a value, and it looks like the job was successful, so our workspace processed it, and we've even already sent out the email. So I can go into my email inbox now and expect to see a new email. And here we have an email informing us that the status of our service request is now complete. We should be able to view that in ArcGIS Online. So here's our completed survey submission in ArcGIS Online. And just to verify, let's take a look at the service request in Cityworks Respond. And here is our completed service request in Cityworks Respond. So as you can see, once this workflow is in place on FME server, the actual process is extremely fast. From the status update on our work order, everything took place in just a few seconds. But if it's potentially replacing hours of manual data entry, having to remember to update all of these different records, send out notifications. It's also creating greater transparency so all stakeholders know what the status is, are informed, and potentially preventing complaints. What we're really trying to do here is give back time in everybody's day with this workflow. Just to recap, Chris's workflow demonstrated ArcGIS Online pushing data into Cityworks. My workflow demonstrated Cityworks pushing data into ArcGIS Online, and both workflows are using FME to synchronize and integrate that data across both platforms. And as I mentioned before, there's so much opportunity to transform that data, connect it with other data, enrich it in between. So I really hope that gave you some ideas to how you might be able to work with your own Cityworks data, and not just with ArcGIS Online, but other applications within your organization. And on the technical how-tos, I just want to highlight custom transformers and the Cityworks API as they're going to be your best friends for building out these automated workflows, because webhooks and APIs and these web integrations can really take it to the next level, and you don't have to worry about making mistakes in the backend database or unintended consequences. You can also easily accomplish these multi-step requests in an FME workflow, and make sure that every field is filled out and every record is updated across each platform. And combining these tools, the sky's really going to be the limit on what you can accomplish while you're away from your desk or working on other things. So yeah, I hope that was inspiring for your own workflows. And if you are interested in learning more about this technical hands-on, we have another poll here, just a quick one, to gauge your interest in a live training course later this year, hosted by us at Safe Software. We'd love to get this started, and if you can share whether this is something that you or a couple of folks from your organization would be interested in attending, please let us know. And also, there's no shame in answering no as well. We have tons of free tutorials that can get you started on these workflows available on our website, and that can be done self-guided. They're available for free. We even have a recorded video of past Cityworks training that we hosted a couple of years ago that can guide you through the process. And of course, we're always available to answer questions. So I'm just going to give a couple moments on that poll for everyone to participate. Looks like most people would be, so that's awesome. I'm glad to hear it. So that's something that we have in the works, and it looks like it might be a popular idea. So thanks everyone for participating in that. Look out for updates for that course, maybe in a spring, summer this year. So for right now, though, to start your journey with FME and Cityworks, please reach out to us with all of your product and workflow questions. If you don't think of it now during the webinar and the question panel or during our live Q&A, we're always available. Get in touch. We have the info@safe.com. As well as the FME community to ask questions and start a conversation. You can download a free trial of FME from our website and start building workflows. And we have lots of free resources on the community for Cityworks integrations as well as everything else. So our Getting Started with Cityworks tutorial covers everything really that we've talked about during this webinar with more of a step-by-step instruction. Getting started with APIs we've added here because it's much more generalized, but it's invaluable for mastering web integrations and how they work. So if you want to brush up on your API skills and learn how to do some cool stuff with APIs, check that one out. There's lots of similar tutorials as to these, like working with CAD data, working with different kinds of databases, data validations, everything you can imagine is on our community. I highly recommend it. And lastly, the FME Academy is our official training environment for learning how to use all of our platforms, different workflows, and it's modular, so you can complete it in a self-directed way and just choose the bits and pieces that are relevant to your workflows. So please do check out these resources. I'll pass it on to Elizabeth.
Perfect. Thanks, Sinai. So yeah, Sinai just mentioned our community is a great resource, also to network with other users and FME learners alike. If you are part of the community, we do have a community badge code to redeem in that as a thank you for joining us today. So I just dropped that in the chat. We also have a lot of great upcoming webinars that will be coming this winter and into the spring here. So check those out, safe.com/webinars. And we have our FME Accelerator course. So this is a free 90-minute workshop. It's a great way to learn to maximize your data and minimize efforts using FME. So safe.com/accelerator, that is a great place to get started. And we have an ebook as well, The Ultimate Guide to Spatial Data for the Enterprise. So I'll leave that link in the chat if that is of interest to anyone. And registration for our Peak of Data Integration 2023. It's coming to Europe in Bonn, Germany this September. So we're all really looking forward to that. Please do feel free to check out that registration. It is now open as of just a couple days ago. And I actually believe that the early bird pricing is over 50% sold out already. So definitely get that early bird pricing while you still can. And with that, we do have 7 minutes remaining here for some Q&A, and I have seen some new questions come into the panel. So I'll get our presenters and myself, we'll turn back on our webcams there and take a look. Perfect. Any of the team might want to get started with?
Just taking a look. Great questions. So many to choose from. Cityworks team, if you see any that you'd like to address, definitely also feel free to bring those ones up. Just a quick one for you, Elizabeth. We will be able to share some of these workspaces out with the audiences. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So in our follow-up email, we'll share a link to the webinar page, and there you'll be able to download workspaces from the webinar itself so you can try things out.
Awesome. And as I mentioned, we do have some tutorials on the Getting Started with Cityworks page on our community with some step-by-step instructions for similar workflows, albeit not the same, but similar. Okay, and I just wanted to follow up on that question about custom transformers for PLL components. We do have a couple in the works, so keep your eye out on the FME Hub, and I'll be updating that soon with a case creator and case task creator and updater. So I know we've got a few folks who are excited to get started with those PLL workflows. And we have a question here from Charlie asking, does FME support these Cityworks storeroom APIs? And as far as I know, any API available on Cityworks, we should be able to interact with those. Is there any sort of considerations for working with different APIs on Cityworks or special licensing you might need? Maybe I'll toss that one over to the Cityworks team in case there's anything they should know. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, and so yeah, I mean, we have a number of APIs, and some are some of the functionality is available kind of out of the box if you've got a PLL Edit Plus or AMS Edit Plus license, and those are called basically our Cityworks centric APIs. So we're talking about dealing with data within Cityworks. We're talking about working with our strategic development partners, but then as well we also have APIs that are more what we would call, I guess, paid APIs, which are needed when you're interfacing with things that are third-party applications that are outside of kind of Cityworks. And so basically, that's kind of, I think, pretty much the point here is that there are different Cityworks licenses available, for working with our webhooks and APIs. And essentially, we have what's called named API licenses. So like, for example, our service request or work order or case APIs. But then again, we also have these Cityworks-centric APIs, which are things like AMS Edit Plus and PLL Edit Plus. And it's basically based on what you're trying to achieve in the software regarding what type of API license that you may need. If you have any questions from a partner standpoint, Steven Shishka was excellent at answering those, and we have a knowledge article available. If you have any questions on the client side, I would advise you to get in contact with your CSM, and your CSM can then bring those questions back to us, or they can answer them themselves. But it's kind of very much a case-by-case circumstance. So yeah, it's definitely something you want to be careful with as far as the API licensing.
Hey, Brian, can you maybe speak to Stuart to ask the question, are Cityworks audit tables and audit logs recording these integrations. Maybe we can speak to that for a second. Or recording actions from these integrations.
Sure. So yes, they are, as long as you're utilizing Cityworks API calls. If you're leveraging the API calls, then the user whose token you're using to initiate those calls, it's going to be, those actions are going to be audited and recorded. If you're using automation outside of our APIs to do things, then the system is not going to have a way to audit or, realize what's essentially being done to it. And so that's kind of one of the big advantages of leveraging our APIs, obviously, is that you can get all of that work audited through the system, just as if you were counteracting with it through the UI. And that's where also having a dedicated user for those API calls comes in very handy, because that allows you through your audit log to more easily identify, okay, this was done via said integration, this was done, via the UI, if you're kind of trying to look and decipher through that.
I do see one other question from Steve McElroy asking, can FME be integrated with Workday? And maybe that's a safe question. I don't see why it couldn't, but do you guys have any experience on that side?
Yeah, so that one is totally possible. We don't have any custom transformers on the FME Hub for that yet, but I have been looking into potentially building one in the near future. I'm not sure what the timeline will look like, but in the meantime, you can absolutely connect using the REST API. It would be very similar to any of the other API-based transformers we built. And we have a great getting started tutorial if you do want to get up and running with that soon.
Excellent. And it looks like we do have one last question here from Lily. So I'll bring that up on the screen here. Without experience of Cityworks and Access currently, is it recommended to attend the 4-hour training course, and how would she enroll herself?
Yeah, thanks for your interest, Lily. There is no experience necessary, and the last time we held this course, we provided an environment with FME Server and Cityworks in order for you to complete the exercises during that day. So no experience required. We don't yet have official dates for that. We're just gauging interest at this point, but please do look out on our website for that training course. I'm hoping to get it up there soon based on the feedback we've received today. But expect it to be around spring, summer, and there should be enough room to accommodate anyone who wants to attend.
Excellent. All right. Any other questions that we might want to address or elaborate on here, team, before we wrap up?
I see one more technical question that Brian, you can probably fill. It says, can the dedicated API user be Windows AD?
Yes. Yeah, we've now expanded the capability to do that. So yes.
Awesome. All right. And with that, I want to extend a huge thank you to the Cityworks team for joining us here and co-hosting this webinar with us here today. We've really appreciated it, and it's been a great resource, as I can see from the comments from our audience. Huge thank you to Sinai and Chris as well, and our whole team of attendees here this morning. So thanks everyone for joining. And if you do have a brief moment to fill out the webinar survey, I left the link in our chat there. We'd really appreciate any feedback. It helps us continually improve our program. We also do have some contact info on this slide if you would like to chat with us further about anything data, and then contact info for Brian and Rachel at Cityworks as well. Thanks everyone for joining, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.